if a company came to you and wanted to renegotiate, let's say, on a new project, how would you prepare to make it as successful as possible, like the outcome as successful as possible for both of you, I guess?
Oh, okay. So this is like a negotiation question, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you have to. So the term that's used in like formal negotiation school, I suppose. I never went, but I read a lot of books. The term is BATNA. It's best alternative to a negotiated agreement,
Right.
right? So if you figure out what sort of like your floor is, and then you won't go below that, that gives you a foundation, right? Otherwise, they'll just bargain you into zero, right? And there are a lot of different tactics that are out there. I would suggest reading books. Like there was one that a good friend Sebastian Wolf recommended to me. It's called Negotiating with Giants. It's negotiating when you don't really have a position of power. And then there is also Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He is an ex-FBI negotiator, and it's a very good book about negotiation and specific tactics.
Nice.
But the best thing to do to go in is when you go in is to be as informed as possible. And that means you have to be informed about your value as well. So if it's like it's a sequel and as a renegotiation, you have to know sort of how well they did versus how well they thought they were going to do. And that's something you would know because you had a conversation about that before, right? And then you need to know sort of like if people like the music, right? Are there ways for you to prove this, right? I mean, so it's important to get creative about it before the project is over, right? To see if there's some way that you can measure this, right? And going in also maybe, yeah, you need to know like where you stand with the company, right? I mean, if you had a really good experience working with them and the more they like you, the less they'll be likely to try and screw with you
Right.
because people work with who they like. So yeah, this is not a very organized piece of advice.
That's all right, man. I
to be
mean,
yeah, to be honest, every situation is different, but I would recommend those two books. They're
yeah.
very good. Yeah.
Thanks for those recommendations. Is there any other books you would recommend in terms of business and entrepreneurship?
Uh, well, I mean, there's one classic one that a lot of entrepreneurs read. It's called Zero to One. It's by Peter Thiel. He's one of the original founders of PayPal
Right.
or
Right.
investors in PayPal, right? And he's talking about what zero to one is like. Startups they make something where that previously there was nothing, right? So that's the premise of the book, and he's talking about how to sort of know whether something is going to work, how to get your product to the consumers, and things like that. Another one that's two other books that I'll recommend. They're not really about business. They're more about human psychology. So one of them is called Influence by Robert C. Aldini. He's a social psychology professor at the University of Arizona, and very brilliant guy. And it talks about sort of subconscious ways to influence others and to also knowing these tactics, how to avoid being influenced yourself.
Right.
Yeah. And another book is how to make how
Oh
to
yeah,
win friends and influence people.
that one is really good. I read that one. Really,
Yeah,
really
yeah,
good. Yeah. So yeah, that's
yeah,
a book I
yeah.
can really recommend to people to check out too.
Yeah. Yeah, so these books are good. Negotiating with Giants, Never Split the Difference, Influence by Robert Cialdini, Zero to One by Peter Thiel, and How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And one more, it's a little bit heavy reading. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy.
I've heard about that, but I never investigated it at all.
Yeah, the basic premise is that it's sort of like a philosophy of innovation in order to break into new spaces that others are not. So, for example, composers are not on LinkedIn, and the ones that are on LinkedIn don't know how to use it. They still don't, right? And I've seen people copying my videos, and I get that imitation is the best, sincerest form of flattery,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know what it says about you as a creative person if
Right.
you copy someone's work, right? Nothing very good. Um, so people don't know how to use it. So going in there was sort of like a great way for me to experiment
Right.
and learn in a less competitive environment and sort of solidify a position. And I think like I've done that now, in that I'm probably the most vocal and visible composer for media on, or one of the most, right, in on LinkedIn, probably in the world, just because there are not many.
Right.
It's not like I'm super fucking visible. It's just that there's not very many others out there. And the reason I got the top voices thing is because Singapore is small,
Right.
right? It's not huge. It's less than 6 million people, and even though it is a great honor to be on that list under the Prime Minister of all people, right?
Yeah.
It was only possible because
Right.
it's a relatively small population of users.